Deconverted Man here. Well, welcome to one and all. This is one of those things that I do live because editing a video about this video, uh, whatever. Anyway, so last time I did something like this, it was on a short video, and I spent like an hour on it. I don't think I'll do that. Like, this won't be that long, I hope, because this video is actually longer. It's 24 minutes and 10-second video. Now, this guy's called the Reasonable Creationist. And his video is called Atheists Have Faith That We Live in a God-Free Universe, since they have no evidence that we do. So the question I always ask whenever I see anyone write or say this tu que, the U2 fallacy, which is what tu que is, or 2Q, however you want to say it, is faith good or bad? If you're going to lump us together like this, fine, okay, but is faith good or bad? Let's answer that question. Because if it's bad, then we should try not to have it at all. And if it's good, then it really doesn't matter which of us has faith. Now, I actually, reading his description here, I think almost really summarizes his video. I watched a little bit of it. So, in his description, and for those of you wondering, I will link the video in the description of this thing once it's a thing I can do that, and it's in the little chat area if you're following along with that. So he says, talking about how the atheist, in response to the demand to prove that God doesn't exist, says, I can't prove a negative, but no one is asking them to. Well, that doesn't really follow. If you say, prove God doesn't exist, you're asking somebody to prove a negative. Actually, the phrase should be, I can't prove a universal negative, but usually we shorten that down to, I can't prove a negative, or that nobody can. So this is, no one can prove a universal negative. And I think that's important for this guy, if he does bother to watch this video, to understand. And I don't want to assume that people understand what this is. So I say, there is no baseball in this area that I'm in. That is a localized negative that could be demonstrated. Hypothetically, if you were in the area, if you were in the room that I'm in, you could look everywhere in the room, or I could show you around the room, and we would find no baseball. So the fact that there is none to find would be evidence that there's no baseball, but that's a localized region that we can check. It might be simpler, say that there was nothing in this pain relieving cream bottle. If I said that was the thing, and then we could squeeze it and we could check inside. Now, of course, there is cream in this one, so that's actually an example that doesn't really work, but we're going to pretend that this is empty, and we could demonstrate that it was in fact empty. It's rather simple. But if it was a universal negative, it's not something you can do, because you can't show the entire universe. So if I said there's no such thing as a leprechaun in the universe, that's a universal thing. That then what? Requires some argument, something to back up that statement, because I've asserted something about reality. Can I demonstrate that there is no X? Well, it depends what X is. In the case of a leprechaun, well, we have reasons to think that it is a construction of humans, but somebody arguing for leprechauns could say that simply asserting that leprechauns have been invented by humans is nothing more than the genetic fallacy. So you have to show me that there are no leprechauns, and because you can't go everywhere in the universe, you can't show that negative is true. yeah, you're right. And so now what? Does that really mean I can't say that there are no leprechauns in the universe, or does it mean that I should modify it to say I have no belief in leprechauns because I have no evidence of a leprechaun? So maybe there's one somewhere in the universe, but that's I don't believe that there is. So if somebody that promoted the idea that there was a leprechaun said, well, you can't prove there isn't a leprechaun. Yes, you're right. That's beside the point. That's irrelevant. This is why Russell did the Russell's teapot, to try to explain that proving a universal negative is not a thing anyone can do at all, and it's just a complete red herring from the thing in question. Okay. So, yes, if you demand that someone proves X isn't a thing, unless you're talking about a localized phenomenon, then no, they can't do it. Now, if God is said to be everywhere by some theists, what's it look like? I'm looking at a camera, I can see that. So I can't visually detect God, whatever God is. So then God being everywhere is a statement that you still have to prove, because there'd have to be some way to verify that I am perceiving God in some coherent manner, other than just you asserting that it's everywhere. Okay, so they are being, and now I'm back to reading his description. They're being asked to show that we live in a certain type of universe, one that has no God associated with it, as opposed to the type of universe which does have a God associated with it. Well, I don't know that that's what atheists are being asked, per se, but let's assume that that's what you, this person, reasonable creationist, not you, the viewer, well, unless he's, that's what he is asking for. Okay. First, that's not my field. I'm not a cosmologist. I would say, you'd have to turn to them for that answer, to, how the universe came, what the best ideas that we have about how the universe came to be is, how old it is, how big it is, and all that sort of other things are things that you could find within science. And there's some, ideas out there that are agreed with. There's ideas that are in question, and it depends on who you ask. Don't mind this. Don't worry. It's my magic wand. Don't worry about it. I don't know, being weird. So that would be a question of scientists, not of atheists. It's not my burden or anyone's burden to explain the universe. Nor is it my duty to show you the universe without a God, because that's still asking me to prove a universal negative. You're the one that has to, or, well, whoever is promoting the idea of God, whoever is asserting God, must demonstrate that that's a thing in the first place. If you can't or won't do it, then there's no reason to think that there is a thing called God, not at least within logic. So to show the universe doesn't have a God is irrelevant. Oh yeah, science can explain a lot about the universe. Maybe there's some holes in our understanding or what have you. And some apologists like to point at those holes and say that's where God lives. And even though they won't admit to it. And I'm not saying that this person is doing that or is guilty of doing that, although by the term creationist, I suspect that they probably will be appealing to many gaps in knowledge and saying, well, we don't understand this or that or whatever. And that might be the case, but it doesn't prove God. Nor does it prove not God either. In fact, what is God? And see, that is something that the person that promotes God has to outline. I mean, what do you mean by God? I mean, I could name, I could name this frog God and say, well, God exists, but that's not what you mean by God. So, what do you mean by God, and how do you demonstrate that that thing is a thing rather than just something that you've made up or read about and is something that we can imagine in our brain, but not something real in any other way? It's not, so going back to what they wrote here, it's not that they can't prove a negative. Well, that is true. Nobody can prove a universal negative. So it's that they can't demonstrate that we live in the type of universe they claim we do. If is depends on the atheist, I suppose. This is kind of the whole problem of what you want this word to mean. I usually just say I'm a skeptic. It covers everything for me. I'm like, well, this doesn't apply to me. I'm not an atheist. Haha, I'm a skeptic. Now what? Well, but I'm an atheist because I'm a skeptic, right? I don't believe in God. You can say that's agnostic atheist, or you can call it agnostic. I don't really care. It doesn't really change that I don't believe in this thing. And I don't have to, that's a belief statement, or in this case, a lack of belief statement. I have no burden to prove that statement that I don't believe in X being, in this case, God. If I'm to say there's no God, then I do have a burden to argue for that in some way. Demonstrating it would not be possible within logic, because it's a universal claim. You can argue for there being a not God, but you're going to have to, of course, define what you mean by God. So in my case, I'm happy to say that Yahweh doesn't exist all day long. The God Yahweh, that doesn't exist. Not at all. Not even close. Period. End of story. It's not a thing. I'm happy to make an argument about that God not existing. Other gods, I don't know. Depends on the concept and how you frame it. But I would always ask what the empirical evidence is, what the repeatable test is, or what the valid and sound argument is. And if you don't have any of that, then there's no reason to think that it's even a thing or even a possible thing. And so I must remain skeptical of it. And I would promote that we must remain skeptical of it, because you haven't offered us any reason to think it is. So I'm certainly not making the claim that the universe is free from a God. And if I did, that still wouldn't necessarily mean that I have to show that there's no God. I just, hypothetically, I suppose I could show that the universe doesn't need a God to be the universe. There's no room in the equations that I've seen from cosmology that make God an inescapable thing that you have to put in there. Everything is natural. The way that the Earth formed is because of gravity. Well, why is gravity a thing? I don't know. It's physics. It just is. It's just a part of the universe. Did gravity always exist? I don't know. I have no idea. Ask a cosmologist. When you get down to the singularity that most cosmologists think, where everything began at, where everything is super hot and super small, was there gravity then? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Certainly something was going on, but everything was so hot that what sort of things were going on is hard to say. But then all of a sudden, you've got particles coming into existence, and then things begin to happen rather rapidly, and the why isn't really a question, just the how. We can answer the how. There might not be a why, but to some point at some point we might not be able to answer the how, and we go, I don't know, and that's it. But you say, well, but then you have to have God. Why? Because, well, how else do I? Because I believe in God. That's why you have to have God. It's like, well, but you don't need it to explain the thing. But I don't think that atheists, broadly speaking, are being called upon to explain the universe. And even if we couldn't explain the universe, that's irrelevant, because all we're saying is, well, I don't believe in this thing that you're talking about, or that it doesn't seem to be that there is this thing, that this God thing that you're talking about. I don't see it. I don't detect it, and so there's no reason to think that it is. I mean, you have maybe reasons that you think it is, but if you're not giving me those reasons, or if you give me the reasons and I don't think that those are good reasons, then of course I'm going to object to the idea, as much as I would hope that this person would object to the idea of leprechauns. It's like, well, of course there's no leprechauns. Well, but people believe in them. A very few, handful of people in Ireland or in Scotland, probably more people, I would dare say, believe in the fae folk, which is what we would call fairies. Okay, well, can they demonstrate a fairy? No, of course not. Is there any evidence of fairies? No, but people still believe in them. And they could sit there and say, well, I can't prove them to you, but you can't prove them that they're not there to me. So I guess we're both at a stalemate. No, because the one that makes the claim has the burden of proof. They're claiming that the fae folk are real, then they have the burden of proof. If they just believe it, who cares? It's just a belief statement. They don't really have the burden of proof. I'd want to know why they believe in it, but they wouldn't have to prove anything. Okay. So the faith of the atheist is that we do live in a universe that has no God associated with it. Well, that's a claim that the reasonable creationist is making. It's not the claim that I would make. So I would consider this a straw man, or simply an outright lie. It's just not true. I don't think any atheist, well, maybe there is an atheist that would say that this universe has no God at all. That would be like what you would call a hard atheist or something like that. And again, it depends what you mean by God. But I don't see any reason to think that there is a God, at least the Judeo-Christian God. I can say I don't have any, I know that Yahweh is not a thing. A more generalized version of God as some sort of thing that created the universe, I don't know, maybe, but would it have a mind? Probably not. So if we want to call the thing that made the universe, whatever that is, a God, I guess we could. I think we'd probably find a better label for it, because usually God it tends to mean that something has a mind or an intent or a will. And I just don't know how a mind without a brain would function. So I've asked, believers many times, like, well, how does God's mind work? What is God made out of? And the answers are all over the place. But the true answer would be that they don't know. The holy books don't explain how God works. That's just not what they're about, per se. God's kind of this mystery, and they're okay with that mystery, but they're not okay with the mystery of how the universe came to be. I'm fine with that mystery. I don't need to keep adding a God on to answer the question, because the question doesn't really get answered. It just gets moved back to a different mystery of how God works. How does it function? What is it made out of? Where is it located? When is it located? And if the answer is it's not located anywhere because it's not in space, and then it's not located anywhen because it's not in time, then how does it exist at all? Anyways, so I don't know if there's no God associated with the universe or not. Again, it depends on what you mean by God, or what God would actually turn out to be. But I do think that if there was a God, that it would align with what we observe to be true. So if there's a true God, it would not be the creationist God, because the creationist God asserts either that the earth and or universe is 6,000 years to 10,000 years young, depending on that, and or they have problems with biological evolution with natural descent in regards to specifically humans having been having a common ancestor with other apes. They'll reject that. Other speciation is fine, but humans have to be special because that's what the Bible, they think, says, and that's their dogma, their doctrine that they follow. But that's not what we observe to be true. So that God, because it requires you to believe in a lie, cannot exist at all in reality. If God requires you to say that 1 + 1 is 1,000,000, that God is not true. So the creationist God is inconsistent with reality, and therefore could not ever be a real God. For the sake of argument, I'm back to reading his thing. For the sake of argument, I'll concede that I have no evidence that God exists. Well, thank you for being honest. So we're done. If there's no evidence of it, then there's no reason to believe in it. As far as logically speaking, there's many emotional reasons and cultural reasons that you would believe in something. But there's no evidence, then there's no motive for me to think it's a thing, and that should really be the end of the conversation. But by his own admission, the atheist has no evidence that God doesn't exist, which you already said before is, you're saying that you're not demanding proof that that's the case. So why are you now asking for proof that it's the case? Nobody can prove a universal negative. It's just not something that we can do because we don't have access to the entire universe. But it wouldn't really matter even if we did have access to the entire universe, because God can be placed beyond the universe, whatever the belief that means. So God is hiding under a rock that you cannot overturn because that rock itself is hidden in a place you're not allowed to go. So the Reasonable Creationist here says, where does that leave us? It leaves us both having faith that we live in a universe with a God and a universe without a God. Well, at least supposedly you hope that it leaves you both on an even playing field. This is the 2Q fallacy, the 2Q, the you as well. We both have faith, just in different things. No, I don't have any faith at all, or I try not to. I don't believe in a God. I certainly don't believe in Yahweh. I certainly don't believe in the creationist God, because the creationist God is incoherent. It cannot exist. So I don't need faith for that, because I have plenty of evidence and arguments against a creationist God. Not to mention logical reasoning, just simple logical reasoning. A real God has to conform to real reality as we really find it. And if your God requires us to deny any aspect of reality, which creationist gods tend to do, then it cannot exist. That's it. You can rail against that all you want and say, well, you're evolutionist this, and, we don't understand that or whatever. It's like, look, if you go learn science, then come back after you've understood it, because my experience has been that creationists tend to really just not know anything about science, like, other than what they've read on a creationist website. And many of them don't seem interested in learning about it. But I've had one good experience with a creationist, so who knows? Maybe this person will want to learn about science. Maybe they'll want to learn about logic, and maybe they'll do so. And then they'll stop being a creationist, although they might still believe in God. It's just they would lose the bit that makes the God completely unable to be real. So no, but we're not on the same playing field. And if we both have faith, again, that question of is faith good or bad comes into play, because if we're both in the same playing field, you believe and I don't believe, and there's no way for anyone to prove anything, that's a good argument to be a skeptic then we shouldn't, if we can't not believe and we can't believe, then we should just suspend all judgment on the matter. I guess you might say that's agnostic or something. I don't know. How about skeptic? That works too. I'm just in doubt of either answer. And you should be as well. That would actually place us on the same playing field. But it wouldn't mean that we live in a universe with a God and a universe without a God, because the two couldn't simultaneously be true. Unless God is immune to paradox and logic, then God can exist and not exist at the same time. Why not? If God can do everything, even the logically incoherent, then God could exist and not exist at the same time. Or maybe God existed at the very beginning of the universe but exploded itself in order to create the universe. What about that as a possibility? Who knows? But at any rate, if there's no evidence either way, it would be most reasonable to say we live in an agnostic universe, where there may or may not be a God. Sure, I'll go with that. It's fine by me. I'm still a skeptic. It doesn't affect it. It doesn't change anything about my position. I did a video on this, the meme thing about you're not atheist, you're agnostic, and if I recall right, I basically said it doesn't matter what you want to call me. It doesn't change the fact that I don't believe in your God. And if that matters to God, then and or you, then you should try to convince me that there is a God. And if it doesn't matter to God or to you, then you're not going to try to convince me, and not all religions are about trying to convince people. So it just depends on the claim you're making. But if you want to make a positive claim, you have to provide the proof of it. And if you cannot, then no one should believe it. Okay. Why then are there atheists in an agnostic universe? Well, if because there's theists in an agnostic universe. That's why. If everyone was unsure of God, no one would promote God, and then nobody would have to deny God. That is to say, no one would say there's a God, and then there wouldn't be anyone to say, no, there's not. If everyone was uncertain about it and accepted that we were all uncertain about it, then the idea of God wouldn't be a thing, and then there wouldn't be a theist, and then there wouldn't be an atheist. And the word agnostic wouldn't even need to be a thing either. So that's why. But you have your own answer. Of course you do. Because atheists have faith that we don't live in an agnostic universe. I never actually even thought about the universe being agnostic, or atheist, or theist. But so I guess I don't have faith, but I don't believe that. I wouldn't term it this way, so I just wouldn't agree. But okay, let's say that I accept we live in an agnostic universe. Okay, great. I'm agnostic, whatever. I don't care. I'm a skeptic. Doesn't matter to me what the label is. I still don't believe in God. All right, now what? Just as Christians do. Okay, so now you're saying, so we both live in the agnostic universe, and atheists have faith that we don't live in it, and Christians have a faith that we don't live in the agnostic universe. So you're saying the actual universe is one where we should neither believe nor not believe in God. Great. You're a skeptic now. Join my club. It's more fun, trust me. Because now you get to learn actual science and stop being a creationist. Although I guess you also have to discard the idea of God because you shouldn't believe in it since you're an agnostic universe, right? Because as certain atheists like to say, faith is a belief in the absence of evidence. What? Faith is a belief in the absence of evidence. Now, I think the correct phrasing, at least for Christianity, is that, what is it? Faith is the evidence of things unseen, or something like that. I don't remember the Bible quote exactly. But yeah, absence of evidence would be a thing that you would have if you don't have belief. I'm on live. I'm on live. Yeah. Oh God, mercy. Oh, Andrew is saying things in chat as I aim my camera into the air. Okay, camera's in the air, but I'm still on live. Camera's in the air. Don't ask me. I don't. It's not like I care. Okay, Andrew has a lot of things to say in chat, so I feel I should. Yeah, look, no one wants to know anything. Whatever. Andrew says he's not a leprechaun. Oh yeah? You can't prove that you're not. Kira Ora, all from New Zealand, where it's the darkest night. Have I seen Why We Believe in Gods by Andy Thompson? I might have. I know I've watched something called Why We Believe in Gods at some point, and basically the answer is because we're pattern-seeking creatures. Dark matter. Don't let the magic wands touch. Right, exactly, yeah. Why does he believe when he concedes in having no evidence for God? I don't know. He doesn't tell us in the description of this particular video. Really, we're gonna pour cereal on me talking. That's fine. Whatever. Hold on. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. People believe in things that just might be the way the brain works. Who knows? The universe can't be agnostic or atheist because the universe isn't a person. I would agree with that. It can't be theist, Christian, Jewish, Hindu, or Muslim because the universe is not a person. Oh God, laws. Okay. There, I responded to everything Andrew Martin said. All right. I'm awesome. Give me money. I don't know. Whatever. Would you eat it? All right. I'm almost done. All right. All right. Where was I? All right. Okay, so faith is the belief in absence of evidence. Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you have an absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence is a thing that apologists like to say, which is true, but it doesn't really help you either. If you don't have any evidence, that's not really a good thing. So just being like, well, but that doesn't prove that there isn't any. Well, yeah, but it doesn't really help anything either. So if you don't have evidence, then yeah, you have faith. You don't need faith if you have evidence. And there you are, atheists, in the absence of evidence, either way, believe we live in a God-free universe. That is the faith of an atheist. Well, no, not really. Because if we actually grant your entire argument, then either way you have faith, and so what? What's your point? And okay, so we live in an agnostic universe, so you shouldn't believe either. But you do. So why? What's the point of your video then? Other than do a 2Q. And I haven't even responded to the video. This is just me responding to the description of the video. How long have I been going? 30 minutes plus. So that's good. See, it's half of what I did last time. So that's it. That's all I'm doing this time. I'm not going for an hour this time. So yeah, Andrew Martin, you should feel privileged because you are validated. LOL. So yeah, I'll say your name again one more time, and then I'm gonna end the video. Your name again one more time. All right. Thanks for watching. Oh look, it's Bang Gun. See, I have to say his name now. Yes, that's true. Absence of evidence can be evidence of absence if absence is where there should be evidence. That's true too, but apologists don't like to say that. But at any rate, I'm going to wrap up now because if I keep going, it will not be half of what I did last time, and I want it to be. So goodbye. That's it. We're done. So check out that video if you want, I guess. I mean, I'm not going to listen. I'm pretty sure he's going to make the same points in the video. I could be wrong. If you really want me to deconstruct his video for logical fallacies, let me know. But in the meantime, lobsters exist, and thanks for watching and subscribing and being my friend and licking unicorns, whatever. I don't know. But yeah. So that's the thing. Hit the button. Where's the button? That is the button. Okay. Hit it. Meow, 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 meow. I can't edit. Hit the button. Oh, there's the button. There's the button. I found it.